We'll do the Maimer Asora Sheyoshvim V'Oiskim B'Torah in Maimori Melukotim, Maimori Meluket on the volume 4. This is the ninth Maimer. The Maimer Asora Sheyoshvim V'Oiskim B'Torah was a Maimer that was said by the Friedrich Rebbe on Yud Beis Tammuz, or he gave this Maimer to the celebration of Yud Beis Tammuz, the first year after the freedom, in the year Tafresh Peiches. As it says here in the notes, this was the 15th of Tammuz, which is still the celebration of Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz. It continued into Tezvav Tammuz. But then later on, they published this Maimer uh, in a kuntrus known as kuntrus called Yud Tammuz, Tavshin Nun. It's where they printed this Maimer. The Rebbe said this Maimer uh, on Tezvav Tammuz in Tavshin Membeis, but they printed the Maimer in honor of Yutes Tammuz in Tavshin Nun. What is Yutes Tammuz Tavshin Nun? So this was the 110th year of the Friedrich Rebbe entering into the Bris Shel Avram Avinu, Olav Shalom, because if he was born on Yud Beis Tammuz, the Friedrich Rebbe, the Bris was on the 19th of Tammuz, and also this was the seventh day of the celebration of the Bar Mitzvah of the Friedrich Rebbe in the year Tafresh Nun Gimel. He was born in Tafresh Mem. Tafresh Nun Gimel was his bar mitzvah, and they celebrated for 7 days. It was like a chasana, like a Sheva Brachos. That's why the 15th was the 19th of Tammuz was the Sheva Brachos, the end of these 7 days. So this was given out in honor on Yutis Tammuz, Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Pinchas Shnas Tovshin Nun. And the Rebbe references over here that he made the bar mitzvah then for 7 days. And this Maimer, as it says in the note, is a continuation to the Maimer that also starts with Asora Sheyoshvim that the Rebbe said on Yud Gimel Tammuz this same year, 2 days earlier, on the 13th of Tammuz in Tavshin Membeis. Uh, so, and that went, that appeared on a separate kuntres in Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz, and that was the a previous mimer before this mimer over here. Yud Gimel Tammuz Asora Sheyoshvim V'Oiskim B'Torah. That's the previous mimer. So now let's do the mimer inside, the mimer of Asora Sheyoshvim. Beside the Shmaya Tezvav Tammuz Heitov Shimem Beis. So basically, this mimer is going to be a explanation of the mimer that the Friedrich Rebbe spoke of. Now, the Friedrich Rebbe in the mimer discusses the advantage of learning Torah publicly, which means the special benefit of learning Torah, and as we see in the Mishnah, we see with a minyan, Asora Sheyoshvim Yeshvim B'Torah, or even less, but there's a maila, there's an advantage in the revelation that we get through learning Torah publicly. And the Rebbe, in that Maimer, the Friedrich Rebbe, learns it all from the Tefillah B'Tzibur. And the Rebbe is going to compare basically throughout the Maimer how Tefillah B'Tzibur accomplishes tremendous things. And in a way, the Torah B'Tzibur is also accomplished, and in a way, some even more than Tefillah B'Tzibur, as the Rebbe explains in the Maimer. So we'll learn this side again. עשרה שיושבין ועוסקין בתורה, שכינה שרוי ביניהם. So you have 10 people that are sitting and occupying in Torah. The Shekhinah, the divine, the rest Shruya B'neim amongst them. So my father-in-law, the Rebbe, the master of redemption, meaning it's Yud Beis Tammuz, following Yud Beis Gimel Tammuz, when the Maimer is said. So the Baal HaGeula, the Frierdiker Rebbe, B'mamore Dibur HaMaschil Zeh, in the Maimer that also opened up with these words, Asor Sheyeshu. Now the Frierdiker Rebbe gave this Maimer association nitten al yodel lechagigas yud beis tammuz orishoino shnas tov reish peiches. It was given through the Frierdiker Rebbe to the celebration of the very first Yud Beis Tammuz in the year Tov Reish Peiches. The Frierdiker Rebbe was let out of his exile in Kastrama on the 12th of Tammuz. So this was given for the first following celebration of the year after in Tov Reish Peiches. So what does the Frierdiker Rebbe explain in the Maimer? The Hagam, that although Shagam Echot Sheyeshev V'Eisek B'Torah Mamshich Gilui Elokus, even though that even one who sits and occupies in Torah draws down a revelation of godliness, so you don't necessarily need 10 to study together in order to draw down godliness, a revelation of godliness. Ukehemshech Maimer HaMishnah, as the continuation of the statement of the Mishnah itself. Umenayin afilu chamisha chulu. Where do we know that even 5 get? The Mishnah says afilu shloisha, even 3 chulu that are learning together. Afilu shnayim chulu, even 2 afilu echad chulu. So the Mishnah goes through the different numbers that all cases you bring down the Shekhinah. And yet, mikol makom, but yet hahamshocha shal yidei Torah derabim, the hamshocha that comes through Torah, which is learned in the Rabbim, guess with the minyan, the Shara Shiyoshvin Be'eskim B'Torah, he hamshocha nailis yoser. That's a more elevated hamshocha. It's a greater, it comes from a higher place. It's drawn down. When a minyan learns together, they bring it down from a higher place. The Kamoy Shebit Tefillah Amru Razal. So the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, just like by davening, our sages of blessed memory said, Tefillas Rabim Einonim Eses, the tefillah which is done barabim, the tefillah of a community of the many, is not refused, which means that it has the power of always accomplishing, and it does not get rejected. Ki al yidei tfilas rabim nimshochim yud gimel midas harachamim shalamaylo mihishtalshalus. Because through the prayer, the davening of the rabbim, of the minyan, you draw down the 13 attributes of mercy, Shalamaylam Ishtalshalus, that is above Ishtalshalus, and therefore they are not rejected. You accomplish with your prayers because you tapped into the level which is higher than Ishtalshalus. And then he brings down the Yiseda Mizu, and it's more than that. We're saying that you get from Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, but it's more than that. The Hahamshocha Milmailo Shal Yidei Tfilas Rabim Hiloi Life'erecha Yisaruso Delatata Shalahem. What's drawn down from above through the prayer of the Rabbim is uncomparable to the arousal of below of there, so that the davening begins with an esarusa deletata from the people davening, but the hamshocha that comes because it's a rabbim is way beyond, uncomparable to the investment, to the insarusa deletata of the people davening, of the rabbim. It's uncomparable what they can bring down through the davening of the rabbim. Gam loy lifi erecha isarusa deletata the rabbim. Not even comparable to the arousal milamata isarusa deletata from the many. The hamshocha is way beyond, uncomparable, even through the sarusa deletata that comes from the rabbim. So just like we say by Torah, that you bring down from higher than Ishtalshulus, and you bring down an uncomparable Hamshocha, you bring it down much higher than Isrus Latata the Rabbim, Kemekenu b'Torah. The same thing is true for Torah. Shal Yidei Limud HaTorah the Rabbim. That when there is the study of Torah, Berabim, Hu hamshochas yud gimel midas harachamim shalamayla meishtalshlus. So first off, you have and you draw down the 13 attributes of mercy, which is higher than ishtalshlus. And that comes through Torah the Rab. And the second thing, as the Rebbe will say in a minute, that the hamshocha is beyond the limud HaTorah of the Rabbim, leili fe'erech, just like we said by the davening. But the Rebbe makes a note here in the bracket that why do we seem to need to tap into Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim? We need a Rabbim. Why do we need a Rabbim for that? L'chayda, the idea, we know that the Torah is learned with Shloisha Srimides HaTorah Nidreshes Bahem. Basically, that Torah inherently is connected to the number 13, which is the ways of learning Torah. There's 13 measures, Shloisha Srimides HaTorah Nidreshes Bahem. And that seems to be any time you learn Torah, whether you're learning with a minyan or not. Here we're associating and saying that when you learn B'Rabbim, you get the Yud Gimel Mid Sarachim higher than Ishtalshlus just by davening. But isn't Yud Gimel Mid Sarachim always connected to Torah? And the Rebbe is going to explain, but it's on a higher level. The Hagam in the brackets. The Hagam Sham Shochad Yud Gimel Midei Sarachim Al Yidei Sekat Torah Hu Mitzad Malas HaTorah. That is because of the advantage of Torah. Torah inherently has the advantage that it brings down the 30 midas harachamim because of Torah, not because you're doing it with a minyan, but just because that is what Torah is, the Yud HaGimul HaMidas because the 13 measures with which the Torah is expounded, they correspond to the 13 attributes of mercy. So from this it's understood that we bring down the 13 attributes of mercy, is even if one sits and occupies in Torah, you already have the Midas Harachim in the Hamshocha, because that's the part of the 13 Midas is learning HaTorah Nidreshes B'hem, your Mamshich, the level of Yud Gimel Sarachim. So why are we saying that if you learn Torah Barabim, that you have the Yud Gimel Mitzvah Rachamim? Explains that Mikol Makom, nevertheless, Hamshochas Yud Gimel Mitzvah Rachamim Al Yidei Eisek HaTorah, the drawing down the 13 attributes of mercy through occupation with Torah, he be'iker Al Yidei Limud Torah Barabim Dake. Mainly, it comes learning Torah publicly. Hainu. What does it mean mainly? Is it even anytime anyone who learns Torah? So anytime, because the Torah has the Maila, but mainly means a higher level in Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. Hainu, שהדרגה דיוד גימל מידס הרחמים שנמשכת על ידי עסק התורה ברבים. The level of the Yud Gimel Tzarachim that comes by learning Torah publicly, Hidarga Nailis Yoser is an higher level, it's a higher step of the Yud Gimel Tzarachim. So that's the one point that the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe, says in the Maimer, that when you learn Torah Barabim, just like when you daven publicly, you bring down Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. And the second thing is that the Hamshocha is way higher by davening, way higher than what you Isarusa de Latata. The same thing is by Torah. Yisayrim is a Hamshocha shal Yidei Limud HaTorah Derabim, that when we bring down what we draw down through the learning Torah Barabim, it's not comparable to the study of the Rabbim, which means you get back a much greater than the investment that Rabbim bring through their learning Barabim, but the Hamshocha is Shaloi Liferech. It's higher than Ishtalshlus, and it's Shaloi Liferech, their study. Just like by davening, it comes from L'mayla Mishtalshlus, and it's uncomparable to the Sarusa Dilatato. That's basically what the Friedrich Rebbe wrote in this Maimer in Asora Shieshvin in Tofreish Peiches for his first celebration of Yud Beis Tammuz in Tofreish Peiches. And the Rebbe now says that we can actually see the equation from prayer and study of Torah from the pasuk that this Mishnah brings. Here we're saying that there is a comparison, there's a parallel, just like by Tefillah, the same thing is by Torah. So the Rebbe brings down that actually the Mishnah, to prove its point with regards to Torah, brings a pasuk of Tefillah. How do we bring a pasuk of Tefillah to prove a pasuk of Torah to prove something about Tefillah? It means that it's really parallel, that it's really the same thing, and that's why a pasuk that speaks by Torah also provides evidence for something about Tefillah, because it's really one and the same idea. I think there's a connection. Beis v'yeshloimar shadimya in the Torah l'tfilos. This that we compare, the comparison between davening, learning Torah and davening. Merumas gam b'maimer hamishna hanal. This is actually also hinted in the saying of the above Mishnah. But the Mishnah concludes the last thing, umenayin afilu echad. How do we know that even one person that learns Torah, and the pasuk seemingly that we bring proof is talking about tefillah. So how do we know? It says because shenemar, because the pasuk says, so the pasuk pasuk says b'chol hamokoy masher askir es shmi ovei elecha uverachticha, that in all the places, in all the place that I mention my name, which the Eibishter's name is mentioned as is, I come to you and I bless you. So this is the pasuk that the Mishnah brings, that you need not a minyan or three or five or three or two, just I, a singular. I mentioned my name. When we mention the name of Hashem, Hashem comes to you. So the Shechina Avay Elecha, even by one Uverachticho, and I will bless you, a singular. So a person by himself gets the bracha. The Bechol HaMokim. So what is the place that we're talking about in every place? Koyal Beis Hamikdash. That is the place of the Beis Hamikdash. Mokim Shashchina Ba'osham. That is the place of the Beis Hamikdash, because that's the place where the divine comes there. As the pasuk says, Avoy Eilecha, I'll come to you, which means that in the place of the Mikdash, I come to you. The Eibishter comes to you in the Beis Hamikdash, because it is Dafke in the Beis Hamikdash that you can really mention Hashem's name. So when you're in the Beis Hamikdash and I mention my name means that the Hashem's name is mentioned over there in the Beis Hamikdash. Sheboy nitan reshus lahaskir shem hameferish, in which permission was given to mention the explicit name of Hashem, which it says askir es shmi. So in the place, in the Beis Hamikdash, I come and I bless you. That's what the pasuk says. So how is this associated with learning Torah biyachid? So, because the Beis Hamikdash is really a place of davening. Beis Hamikdash shayich la'amud ha'avodah. Beis Hamikdash has a connection to the pillar of avodah. Alat shloisha dvorim ha'olam omed, or the shloisha amudim, and Torah and avodah. That's the pasuk. The Beis Hamikdash has a connection to the place, to the kav, to the pillar of avodah, and not Torah. Why? Because it's karbonis utfila. That's where the sacrifices, and that's where the prayer takes the place of the karbonis. So this is all talking about when the pasuk says, when you come to the place, to the Beis Hamikdash, and you mention the Shem HaMefeirish, is connected to davening. And so how do we say that this has a connection to learning Torah b'yachid? But besides this proof that it belongs to, because the pasuk it says, the mokem is the Beis Hamikdash, askir es shemi is the place where we mention it, which is, and the Beis Hamikdash has a shaykhis to tefillah. It's also during the Birchas Kahanim that we mention the name of HaMefeirish, and the Birchas Kahanim, that's part of Avodah. That's not part of Torah. And we're bringing this pasuk for Echad Sheyesh B'Torah. Ulahoisiv, the Rebbe says to add to it, Shegam Birchas Kahanim Shabo Hoyu Maskirim Bebeis Hamikdash. That also the Birchas Kahanim, in which they would mention in the Beis Hamikdash as Hashem Kiksovei, the name of Hashem the way it is written. So that was in Birchas Kohanim. Hoisa Achrei Hakrovas Tomit Shel Shachar. That was after the offering of the Tamid, the carbon tamid of the morning, ha'haschala d'chol karbonis. That was the opening of all the karbonis. So you opened up all the karbonis with the tamid, and afterwards you did the birchas kahanim. So the birchas kahanim is directly follows the davening, and that's when you say the Hashem askir Shemi. V'gam achshav kovu chachamim birchas kahanim b'tfilah. And also now, the Chachamim institute to do the Birchas Kahanim during the davening. With Tefillah Atzma, we're in the davening of Birchas Avodah. So you see, the Birchas Kahanim, when we mention the Shem Kiksovei, has a shaykhs to the davening. That's when we say Birchas Kahanim. And in davening itself, in the Birchas Avodah, the service of the Avodah, the Birchas Avodah is when we say the bracha of Birchas Kahanim. So we see that it's all connected to the level of tefillah. So the issue is, Ube Mishnah maybe posuk zeh, but in the Mishnah it brings this posuk, the posuk of B'chol hamokim asher askir es shmi ovei elecho berachticha. This verse, le'inyan hashros hashchina shel limud haTorah. He brings it with regards to the matter of the resting of the vine that takes place through the study of Torah. Umizeh mashma. So from this, it appears that Torah and Tefillah sheyochim zelozeh, that Torah and Tefillah are connected to one another. Ube'inyan zeh b'miyuchad, especially when it comes to this inyan of drawing down the Shekhinah. And the Rebbe says that this idea of that it goes on Torah is the literal pshat. And the idea that this goes also on Torah, that's the Mishnah, that's Torah Shabbat Peh. So the Rebbe explains that mainly it comes from Torah. And through the davening of, let's see what the Rebbe says. And the Rebbe says to add to it that the fact that we say that the Pashta Pshat that Askir Shemi goes to the Beis Hamikdash, in which there is permission given to mention the name of the explicit name of Hashem. This is the simple meaning of the pasuk. Normally, we're talking about that this comes from Torah Shebiksav. Tells us that when you mention the Eibishter's name by the Tefillah, by the Avodah, by the Beis Hamikdash, you get the Avay Alecha Berachticha. That's the Pashta Pshat. Torah Shebiksav. V'apirush Askir Shmi Koya Limud Torah. But the meaning that Askir Shmi refers to Limud Torah, as the Mishnah brings it down to learning Torah, you get Avay Alecha. The Eibishter comes to you, Hu al pi drashas Chazal. That's based on the expounding of our sages of blessed memory, the Torah Shabbat Peh. That's the Mishnah tells us the pshat of that. Papia Yedua Shekol Hinyonim the Torah Shabbat Peh Nimshochem the Torah Shabiksav. So that this is the fact that we know that all the matters of the oral Torah, whatever the Torah Shabbat Peh, come from the written Torah. So the idea of the Mishnah, everything comes from the written Torah. Yesh Loimar. So we can say, the fact that we learn it with regards to Torah from the posik the fact that we're learning it from a posik which simply literally means that it goes in the Beis Hamikdash, which is connected to the pillar of Avodah, to davening. Here we're learning out Torah from a pasuk of Tefillah. Why is that? Who? And the reason is ki ikera inyan dashros hashchina ba'ofen devoy avay elecha. Because the main is the Torah Shebiksav. The main idea of the Shekhinah to come in a way of Avay Elecha. This tremendous level of revelation. Hashem says, I come to you, is talking not by Torah, it's the Torah Shebiksav, is by davening, that's the Pashto Pshat, is the Shaykh Avodah. Hamshocha said in Sof Shalomayla Mishtalshlus Avoy Ani Be'atzmi. This Hamshocha of Ein Sof Haydin Shtalshlus, because it says Avoy Ani Be'atzmi. Why they kav avodah? That's what the pasuk means. That's the pshat. That's the Torah shebiksav Avoy Elecha. And that comes through the kav ha'avodah, which is ha'alo milmata l'mayla, which is davening. The davening, the avodah, is from below to above. That's how we get down Avoy Elecha. Okay, before Betanya, as explained in Tanya. So mainly, why do we get Avoy Elecha? It's because it comes through Isarusa de Latata, it comes through Avodah, which is Halos Man, Milmata Lemaila. Okay, Mavur Betanya, as explained in the Tanya, Da'atam shal yidei tefillah nimshach oir einsof shel lemaila mehishtal shalus. That what is the reason that through davening we get an oir of higher than ishtalshlus? That has to do with the halo mimata lemaila. Specifically, davening changes and brings down from the oir sof shel lemaila mishtalshlus to change things in this world. Shal yidei hamshochazu nase shinui b'hanivroim. Through this hamshoch of lemaila mishtalshlus, there becomes a change. This impacts the created being. To heal the sick and to bless the year. So there's actual change. How do we accomplish this great hamshoch of Ein Sof, explains in Tanya, to make a difference in this world, to change things around in the practical sense? That's because of davening, because of the great elevation advantage of the halah, the bringing up the mayim nukvim, the sarusa de latata, the avodah of tefillah, that has the impact to draw down from lamayla mishtalshlus to make a change in the world. So that's the main, that's what the pasuk talks about. Torah Shabbat Peh. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says it also with regard to Torah. So then through the davening, this hamshocha comes also in Torah. So basically, the main place, the main area where the hamshocha comes from is from tefillah, the kavah avodah. And through the tefillah, it is nimshach also in Torah. So this is the pasuk, and what we're talking about is by Yochid. We're talking about Avoy Elecha, Berachticha, Yochid tefillah, and then Yochid Torah. But now we're discussing in the Maimer of learning Torah publicly as we daven publicly. Based on what the Maimer of the Baal HaGeula is brought down before in Sif Aleph, the Zeh Shal Yidei Tefillah V'al Yidei Torah Mamshichim Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim Shalumayla Meishtalshlus. This, that through the davening and through Torah we draw down the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim that are higher than Shtalshlus, who be Iker B'Tfilas Rabim. So while we have the Avoy Elecha, Batilas Yochid, but mainly we get it in the Tfilas Rabim, U'B'Torah the Rabim, the Torah of the public. Va'ad Shahamshocha Shal Yidei Tfilas Rabim V'Torah the Rabim, to such an extent is it mainly that the Hamshocha, which comes through davening with the Rabim and learning in the Rabim, is uncomparable to the Sarusal Tata, even of the Rabbim, and you bring that a much higher level. Move on. So it's understood the inyan hanal shahamshocha shalamayla miishtalslus shabetoira hiadet filo. This idea that we're saying now, that the hamshocha that comes from ishtalslus in Torah is through tefillah, as we see in the pasuk b'chol mokim, which is talking about a yochid. So just like over there, the ishtalshus l'mayla mishtalshus comes through davening. The davening brings down the level of l'mayla mishtalshus, and then it comes down in Torah. Mudgash oid yoser b'hamshocha sha'idei rabbim. This is emphasized even more when we do the rabbim, because the rabbim is the main hamshocha, is when there's a rabbim in Gimel Tzarachamim. The motion is barely ill. This was explained earlier by Maimer the Yud Gimel Tamuz, the Maimer Yud Gimel Tamuz, in which the discussion was also Asor Sheyoshvin, the Hatam She'inyan Hamshocha Shaloi Liferach Allah Shadei Teru the Rabbim. That the reason that this Hamshocha that is uncomparable to the Halacha that takes place when you learn Rabbim, Nilmet ba'Maimer de Bal HaGeula. So how does the Maimer of the Bal HaGeula, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Master of Redemption, how do we learn it out? He learns out Torah from Tefillah, Meham Shocha Shadei Tefillah de Rabbim, from the Tefillah de Rabbim, because davening publicly, we know, Ken Kabbalah, that's how the Maimer learns it out. Why is that? Huki Iker u'moker inyan zeh hu b'tefillah. Because the main and the source of all this, of bringing higher than ishtalshus and shaloi lifi erech, the sarusa de letata, is by tefillah. And then it's also nimshach in Torah. So mainly it comes through the level of tefillah. And then from tefillah, it comes also to Torah. So the Rebbe brought down that when it comes to the Yochid, the Pasuk talks about tefillah, and we use it for Torah because from tefillah is the main, and then it comes to Torah. The advantage by Yochid, the same thing the Rebbe brings back now, is with regards to the Rabbim. Since the main idea of Yigim and Sarachim is by the tefillah Sarabim, so the fact that it said in the previous Maimon, the Rebbe said that the learn out the tefillah, the Torah barabim, it's learned out from Tefillah barabim because it's mainly by Tefillah barabim, and through Tefillah barabim, we comes to also Torah barabim. And then later on, we'll see in the Maimer that Rebbe actually turns it around, that in a certain level, the Rebbe first will explain why is Tefillah barabim more than Torah barabim, but then the Rebbe will turn it around also the other way, that Torah has an advantage, as the Maimer will develop, as we'll continue to see further on in the Maimer.